Beloved, have you ever looked at your life and wondered why something precious was taken away? Have you questioned why the job slipped through your fingers? Why the relationship ended? Why the door closed when you needed it most? You saw subtraction, you felt emptiness, you cried out in confusion. But hear this truth. What looks like subtraction is never the end. It is the secret preparation for multiplication. The seed must fall into the ground before it rises into abundance. The hand must feel empty before it can be filled with more. And so I tell you now, what left you has not diminished you. It has positioned you, and your season of more is nearer than you think. What looks like subtraction is preparation for multiplication. Life has a way of presenting moments that look like loss. Something is taken away, stripped from your hands, and the immediate feeling is emptiness. You look at what has vanished and you think, this is subtraction. This is less than before. This is me being reduced. But the eyes of the Spirit see differently. What looks like subtraction to the natural mind is in fact the first movement of divine multiplication. When the potter takes clay into his hand, he presses, pulls, and shapes it. To the clay it feels like breaking. To the observer it may appear that the mass is being pulled apart. But in reality, every press is preparation. Every removal of excess is refining. Every reshaping is setting the stage for beauty. So it is with you. That which was taken is not punishment, but preparation. That which is missing was not a loss, but a laying of groundwork for more. Think about a tree in the autumn. The leaves fall, the branches look bare, and the casual observer declares, this tree is dying. But the gardener knows better. He understands that winter is not the end, but the quiet preparation for spring. The falling of leaves is not subtraction for the sake of emptiness, but subtraction for the sake of renewal. The tree must let go to make room for fresh growth, and the fresh growth always returns greater, stronger, fuller than before. The law of life is this: apparent loss precedes actual gain. The tide goes out before it returns with a rush. The farmer plows the field, tearing down the soil before planting. The seed disappears into darkness before it rises into light. Subtraction is the shadow side of multiplication. It only appears to diminish, but it is quietly multiplying beneath the surface. In your own life, you may look at the season you are in and think, I had more yesterday than I do today. I have been subtracted. But in the divine economy, subtraction is never the final transaction. It is only a stage. The pruning of the vine looks harsh, but the gardener prunes only to ensure greater fruit. The removal of one thing creates the space for another. The letting go of today's comfort opens the door to tomorrow's abundance. Consider this. If the ground is already full, no seed can enter it. The soil must be cleared, broken, and opened before it can receive. So when life clears something from your path, do not curse the clearing. Do not mourn the emptying. See it instead as a preparation. See it as the divine clearing of ground, making space for a greater seed, a greater harvest, a greater multiplication that cannot come until the subtraction has done its work. A seed must leave your hand to enter God's soil. Nothing multiplies while it is clutched tightly in the hand. As long as the seed remains in your grasp, it remains one seed, limited, finite, unable to become more. It must leave your hand, fall to the ground, and be entrusted to the soil before it can transform. The moment of release feels like loss. The hand is now empty, but the soil is now full. The hand appears poor, but the earth has become richer. And in time the harvest will prove that what left your hand has never truly left your life. Think of the farmer. He does not cry when he releases the seed. He does not mourn when the grain slips from his fingers into the dirt. He knows a law greater than appearances, that one seed in the soil becomes many, that the sacrifice of one harvest is the promise of another, that what looks like giving away is in fact gaining more. In the same way, there are things in your life that must be released if they are to multiply. Hold too tightly to the past, and it remains the past. Release it, and it transforms into wisdom for the future. Hold too tightly to resources, and they remain limited. Release them into divine purpose, and they return to you multiplied, expanded, pressed down, shaken together, running over. The act of letting go is not loss, it is planting. Notice that the soil receives what you no longer hold. This is a pattern of trust. To release a seed into the ground is to trust what you cannot see. It is to believe in the unseen process of growth. It is to have faith that the soil, dark and hidden, is not a place of death but of life. When something leaves your hand, it may seem to vanish. You cannot see it anymore. But invisibility is not absence. The soil is doing its work, hidden from your eyes, until the right season brings forth the fruit. This law applies to every dimension of your being. Love multiplies when it is given. Kindness multiplies when it is shared. Forgiveness multiplies when it is offered. And resources multiply when they are released into God's order. The refusal to release is the refusal to multiply. The closed hand is always small. The open hand is always expansive. Even in the sacred texts, this truth is written. The loaves and fishes multiplied not while they were held tightly, but when they were broken and given away. The oil of the widow multiplied not in her keeping, but in her pouring. The seed multiplies not when admired, but when surrendered. And so it is with you. What you hold back remains what it is. What you release becomes more than you imagined. The divine cannot multiply what you refuse to release. But the moment you let it go, whether time, energy, resources, or love, you have placed it in God's soil, and God's soil always brings a harvest. Loss is not final. It is divine repositioning. What you call loss is often heaven's way of repositioning your life for greater alignment. The human mind sees absence, emptiness, and defeat, but the spiritual eye sees movement, transition, and redirection. When something leaves you, it is not always a thief stealing from your destiny. Sometimes it is the hand of God rearranging the pieces so that your story unfolds in perfect timing and order. Think of the chess master. To the untrained eye, the moving of a piece backwards looks like retreat. But the master knows that every shift, even the ones that appear to diminish power, are part of a strategy for victory. In the same way, what you call loss is not a retreat from life. It is the strategic repositioning of your soul for breakthrough. A job you did not keep, a relationship that ended, a door that closed, an opportunity that slipped away. These are not graveyards. They are detours. They are the divine hand saying this path is too small for the greatness in you. This road is not wide enough for the abundance ahead. And so the old must be removed to make space for the new. Consider the eagle. When it senses that its nest has become too comfortable for its young, it begins to stir the nest. It removes the soft padding, exposes the thorns, and creates discomfort. Why? Because unless the eaglets are pushed out of comfort, they will never learn to fly. What felt like loss, the loss of safety, the loss of ease, was not destruction. It was repositioning for higher skies. Life does the same to you. Comfort is disrupted. What you leaned on is shaken. The familiar is taken away, and you are tempted to mourn, to grieve, to declare the chapter closed. But this is no funeral. It is a relocation. It is heaven saying, rise higher, stretch wider, move into the greater. There are people who remain trapped in bitterness because they interpret loss as punishment. They do not see the repositioning. They do not recognize that the job they lost opened the door to a business, that the relationship that ended prepared the heart for a union that uplifts rather than drains, that the closed door redirected them to a door that led to abundance. Divine order does not leave you where you were. It always moves you toward the place of enlargement. To reposition is to prepare you for multiplication, and so what looks like loss is often the hidden hand of love, shifting you to a ground where you can grow, to a space where you can flourish, to a soil where your seed will bear more fruit. Surrender is the gateway to increase. There is a paradox in spiritual law. What you try hardest to cling to, you often lose, but what you release willingly returns multiplied. Surrender is not weakness, it is the passageway to strength. Surrender is not giving up, it is giving over. It is the act of releasing control so that the infinite can move freely. The river does not force its flow. It surrenders to the path carved for it, and in doing so, it reaches the ocean. The bird does not resist the wind. It surrenders to its currents, and in doing so, it soars higher. So too, when you surrender what is in your hand, you align with a flow greater than your own. You allow the current of divine increase to carry you where your own effort never could. The problem for many is that they confuse surrender with defeat. They think that to surrender is to be powerless, to abandon the dream, to accept less. But true surrender is the opposite. It is to release the illusion of control and trust that the one who governs the seasons governs your story. It is to understand that increase is not manufactured by human grasping, but by divine order. Look at the seed once again. When it surrenders its form, when it breaks open beneath the soil, it appears to die. Yet it is in that surrender that it becomes more than it was. It was one seed, but in surrender it becomes a tree. It was limited in the hand, but in the soil it is limitless. The surrender was the very act that opened the door to increase. Even in your own life, think of the moments when you tried to control every detail, when you forced outcomes, when you clung tightly to what was slipping away. Did it not exhaust you? Did it not shrink your joy? Yet when you finally released, when you finally surrendered, peace returned, doors opened, provision appeared. What was impossible under your control became inevitable under God's. Surrender is not passivity. It is active trust. It is saying, I release this into the hands that can multiply it. I let go of my tight grip so that I may receive the greater gift. It is the gateway to increase, because only the open hand can receive. The closed hand holds only what it has. The surrendered hand receives what heaven gives. To surrender is to breathe. To surrender is to trust. To surrender is to stand in the flow of divine increase and know that what is meant for you cannot be withheld, and what you release will always return with more. Nothing is truly lost in the divine order. There are moments in life when you look at what has slipped away and you feel the weight of emptiness. You say to yourself, I have lost this forever. It is gone. It cannot return. But the divine order does not operate in terms of permanent loss. In the grand pattern of creation, nothing is wasted, nothing is forgotten, nothing is truly lost. What leaves you is not erased. It is transformed. What disappears is not destroyed. It is repositioned for a higher purpose. The rain that falls into the ground does not vanish. It becomes the river, the ocean, the mist, and returns again in due time. The tree that sheds its blossoms does not mourn, because it knows that every petal is becoming part of the soil that will nourish its roots. The flame that consumes wood does not destroy its essence. It transforms it into heat, light, and energy. In the same way, what you call loss is never the end of the story. When relationships fade, when opportunities close, when possessions are removed, do not interpret it as annihilation. What is gone from sight has not ceased to exist. It has only shifted into a new form. That is the law of spirit, transformation, not extinction. The unseen hand is always at work, taking what looks like an end and weaving it into a new beginning. There is a rhythm to life that the human eye often misses. Just as a seed buried in the earth seems lost, so too do seasons of transition appear like loss. But beneath the soil, the seed is not dead. It is alive with potential. It has not been wasted. It has not disappeared. It is doing its sacred work, hidden, unseen, yet unstoppable. You may think, but I lost years of my life. I lost time. I lost chances that will never come again. Yet even here, nothing is truly lost. Every experience becomes wisdom. Every delay becomes training. Every disappointment becomes a teacher. Time itself is never wasted in the divine order. It is redeemed, recalculated, and rewoven into your path in ways that will astonish you. What seems gone has been stored, preserved, and folded back into your destiny, just as the tide pulls back only to return. What departs from you is not lost in emptiness, but absorbed into a greater cycle. And in the right moment, it returns, not always in the form you expect, but always in the measure you need. Your less is the doorway to more. There is a strange paradox in life. When you find yourself with less, it often means you are standing at the threshold of more. The moment of reduction is often the moment just before increase. What feels like emptiness is not the conclusion, but the opening. Less is not a verdict. It is a passageway. It is the doorway that leads into greater abundance. Think of the story of the widow who had only a handful of flour and a little oil left. In the eyes of the world, she had less. Yet it was in that moment of scarcity that the miracle of more was born. The little she had became the seed of overflow. The apparent insufficiency became the gateway to divine supply. Without the experience of less, the miracle of more could not have been revealed. The soil of less prepares the harvest of more. The space of lack clears the ground for fullness. It is the moment of emptiness that creates hunger for abundance. It is the taste of insufficiency that awakens the desire for completion, and desire is the magnet that pulls increase into being. Look at the pattern of nature. The night grows darkest just before dawn. The womb is most silent before birth. The tree is most barren before the spring. Less always precedes more. Reduction always sets the stage for expansion. When you have less strength, you discover the greater strength of spirit. When you have less control, you open the doorway to divine guidance. When you have less in your hand, you create space for more to be placed within it. The less is not a curse, it is a signal. It is life whispering that you are being prepared for increase. Think of your own journey. How many times have you thought, "This is the end. I have no more left. I cannot continue," only to find that in that very place of less, a new opportunity, a new door, a new supply appeared. How often did the place of emptiness become the birthplace of blessing? Less is the threshold that separates the old chapter from the new. You cannot enter more without first passing through the door of less. To experience fullness, you must first taste emptiness. To embrace abundance, you must first release scarcity. That is the order of things. So when you face moments where resources are thin, when energy is depleted, when the hand feels light, do not despair. The less is not a verdict against you. It is the doorway standing open to a greater realm of more. Trials are planting seasons for abundance. When trials come, they do not arrive to break you, but to plant you deeper. Every difficulty is a seed time, though it disguises itself as hardship. The storm that bends the tree also forces its roots to grow stronger. The fire that seems to consume the gold only purifies it. In the same way, trials are not random. They are sacred seasons of planting. They bury you, but they bury you as a seed is buried, with the intention of multiplication. Without the winter, there is no spring. Without the soil pressing down, there is no harvest. What feels like pressure is actually potential. What seems like loss is preparation for a greater yield. The trial is not your enemy. It is the soil of your abundance. The law of spirit operates in overflow, not lack. The divine order does not calculate in scarcity. Spirit never measures in fragments. It always multiplies in fullness. Look at the ocean. It does not give you drops. It gives you waves. Look at the stars. They do not appear in handfuls. They appear in galaxies. Spirit's language is abundance. Its nature is overflow. Lack is not a law. It is a perception. When you align with Spirit, you enter into the rhythm of more than enough. Your needs are not met with crumbs, but with loaves, not with scarcity, but with supply. The air you breathe is not rationed. It flows without limit. The sun does not withhold light. It floods the earth daily. The law of spirit cannot produce lack. It only knows the way of overflow. What you release, heaven multiplies. Whatever you cling to remains small, but whatever you release enters the stream of divine multiplication. The seed in your hand remains one, but the seed in the soil becomes many. Love kept within you grows stagnant, but love expressed multiplies in the hearts of others. Generosity held back benefits no one, but generosity released returns in waves of abundance. Heaven's law is clear. What you release becomes the very thing that multiplies back to you. Your gift, your time, your kindness, your resources, once surrendered, they are lifted into divine circulation, where increase takes place beyond your sight. The act of letting go is never emptiness. It is an invitation to fullness. Nothing you give in trust is wasted, for the unseen hand transforms the little into the limitless, the small into the multiplied. Your season of more is near. It begins now. There comes a moment when the waiting ends, when the soil that has held your seed begins to break forth with life. You are not far from your season of increase. You are standing on the edge of it. Signs of abundance are already moving toward you, though unseen to the natural eye. The emptiness you felt was only the clearing of space. The delays you endured were only divine timing aligning. The tears you sowed are already watering the harvest that rises to meet you. More peace, more provision, more strength, more opportunities are drawing near, and they do not belong to a distant tomorrow. They are pressing into your present. The same spirit that governs the stars governs your steps, and in that alignment, the season of more does not linger far off. It breaks open now. You have now walked through the great rhythm of spirit, that subtraction is preparation, that the seed must be released, that loss is divine repositioning, that surrender is the gateway to increase, that nothing is truly lost in the divine order, that your less is the very threshold of more, that every trial is a planting season, that the law of spirit is overflow, not lack, that what you release multiplies, and that your season of more is not someday, it begins now. Each keynote was not a theory, but a living law. These truths are the patterns of the infinite moving in your life. Hold them close, breathe them deeply, and let them saturate your mind until they become your experience. Your multiplication is already unfolding, and the greater days are already at your door. If this message has lifted your soul, remember to stay connected with our channel, Malament, where every word is designed to awaken the greatness within you and remind you that the divine is working for you, in you, and through you.